I spit on your grave. Payback's a bitch.
A vingança é frequentemente vista como uma forma de justiça primitiva e, de maneira geral, considerada socialmente inapropriada. Mas Doce Vingança é o típico filme que faz o espectador torcer pela revanche da protagonista, não importando o quão mórbida ela seja. Na verdade, quanto mais sádica, mais satisfatória ela acaba sendo.
Eu vou fazer um close de você.
Na trama, conhecemos a escritora Jennifer Hills, que aluga um chalé isolado numa cidade do interior para começar a escrever seu novo livro. Porém, ela acaba sendo covardemente atacada por um grupo de moradores da região. E após sofrer todo tipo de violência física e psicológica, ela ressurge para se vingar dos agressores. Doce Vingança é um remake de A Vingança de Jennifer, filme lançado em 78, que chocou e marcou uma geração, chegando a ser banido de alguns países. Para Meir Zark, criador da obra, o remake não apenas honra essa história, mas se destaca como uma nova e poderosa interpretação.
It's a great compliment and a tribute to the original. It has its own power, its own story. It's an entity all by itself. Yeah, obviously a lot of people come and compare it to the original, and that's good. But it's not a matter of what better, what worse. It's still on its own. It is a powerful movie. I'm impressed with the work, I'm impressed with what I saw, because there is an audience out there throughout the world that know about this subject.
It's definitely a classic, iconic piece of filmmaking. Absolutely, especially in horror circles.
If you're dumping vinegar in there, I can't put a steak.
Stephen Monroe, diretor do remake, é um fã declarado do original. Ele destaca como o filme se encaixa numa era de produções que ousaram ultrapassar limites e provocar reflexões.
I first saw the original in, I think it was 1980 when the VHS came out. I was 17 years old, and we had heard about it and watched it, and I remember for about 3 days after, I couldn't get it out of my head because I felt like somebody had really pushed an envelope, which was good. And we had already known that it had been banned, so of course as teenagers, that's why we wanted to see it. All my friends went in just wanting to see it because of the title and because it was considered a horror film, and I wanted to watch it from a movie filmmaking standpoint, of course, so I irritated everybody. But for me, that era between 1970 and 1980 was when all the films that really took risks and took chances and pushed envelopes were made. So when it was made was towards the end of that time. And so I was very interested in seeing it when it came out, not from a horror standpoint, from a film standpoint.
Você é um garanhão. Eu vou ter que domar você.
Interpretar Jennifer Hills foi um desafio físico e emocional. Sarah Butler, que deu vida à personagem, enfrentou emoções intensas durante o processo. A atriz relembra como o papel exigiu dela uma transformação profunda, ao ponto de sonhar com as cenas e se questionar se deveria aceitar o trabalho.
I read the script, I cried, and I had a nightmare that night, and I was like, there's no way I can do this. Like, I feel it too deeply. Like, I started to get more interested in it, but then again, I was afraid to do it because I didn't know if I wanted to put myself there. It literally took like a week of, first meeting, everyone in the production and, having, sharing our feelings about everything before I, could finally say, like, okay, this sounds interesting. And then I talked to a bunch of friends and people that I really respect, and they all told me, like, no, seriously, you need to look into this. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I got. Like, oh my God, this is such an honor as an actor to be able to go to these extremes and to be able to, portray that victim convincingly and be crying and just, knowing that I'm going to die and eventually saying, I'm going to kill myself and jumping off that bridge, to getting to that extreme and then going to this dark place where it's almost like I'm a monster. It's like...
Aqui é o Stork no chalé Mockingbird. Vou precisar de reforços.
Reforços? Por que precisaria de reforços? Eu sou a vítima.
Para o elenco, estar envolvido nesse projeto significava entrar num universo delicado de brutalidade e tensão. Jeff Branson, que interpreta Johnny, reflete sobre o comprometimento necessário para trazer essas emoções à vida.
My first impression of it was the brutality, I guess. The brutality. It's a lot of brutality towards a woman. The original thoughts are, can you do it? Can you do it and sell it? Because this isn't something you can half-ass. This isn't something you can start to, just get a few ideas in your head and be like, oh, I think that this would be I think that this would be an interesting moment, or doing that would be interesting. You have to commit to it, or else it doesn't play, it doesn't sell.
Por favor, fica contra a parede.
Apesar da tensão das cenas, o elenco conseguiu criar um ambiente de confiança mútua. Para Andrew Howard, que interpreta o xerife, foi crucial encontrar um equilíbrio entre o trabalho intenso e o cuidado com os colegas, especialmente com Sarah Butler.
The director been very good in finding the right rhythm and beat for those heavy days that we've been working, and you can't trivialize it because you're doing something very serious and something very traumatic for Sarah, who's playing Jennifer. So when the camera cuts, you have to make sure that she's in a place and that everyone is in a place where they feel safe and comfortable. Because if you did carry on that energy off camera, then it wouldn't be a very nice place for Sarah and for the rest of the girls on set. So as much as I, take the piss out of it and joke about it, because you have to, because you desensitize yourself to it, you have to be very careful to draw the line at times. But I think Stephen has been wonderful in that respect. That we know when we have to go deep and go dark, and we know when we have to be serious, and we know when we, can kick about a bit.
Dê um lindo sorriso pra câmera, moça.
And that's one of the things that I found pretty fascinating about the film, is that because the characters get what's coming to them, and Jennifer does come back and torture each and every one of them, it allows you to really go to some deep, dark, sick, twisted places. Because I'm a pretty nice guy, and I'm not, and people are like, how are you doing something like this where you're playing like these sick, twisted guy? And I'm like, well, the more sick and twisted Stanley is, the more the payoff is when he gets his just desserts at the end, like when he gets what he deserves. So it allowed me to go pretty dark in order for the payoff to be pretty big.
Working with Sarah Butler has been absolutely phenomenal experience. It's interesting for so many reasons, because I think that we're all having the opportunity to catch somebody on the cusp of something larger for themselves, because she's a champion. She's our little champion. We can't get the footage that we're getting, we can't get the shots that we're getting without her comfort level being what it is. I don't think anybody else would have been right for this role. I don't think that if we would have found anybody else would have had a problem with some of the stuff we've done to her. We terrorized her one night, and I was the leader of that, and we had a conversation about it. We didn't talk too much. We weren't buddies that night, but we talked about comfort level. We had an outward just in case we had a moment that was too much. We had that respect for one another, but she allowed me to go far. She trusts me, and I trust her back.
O filme é uma análise sobre vingança e resiliência. Sarah Butler descreve como Jennifer emerge das cinzas como uma nova mulher, guiada por ódio primitivo.
I mean, that's another great thing about being here in this location. Like, look at how amazing this is. Like, I really do feel like when I look around, I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I can imagine living out here for a month while I'm recuperating from this terrible thing, and how I would really be, just that vacant anger. And that's what I'm trying to bring through in this, is a woman who is a human, and this is what I think a lot of women who these kind of things happen to want to do. They have these fantasies in their mind of like what they want to do to these men. Obviously, they can't, you know, and it's illegal and we're all better people than that, you know, but that's where this movie goes. And so that's where I'm trying to be, is this real human woman who has been completely battered and broken in both a physical way and in a spiritual way. And somehow she decides to survive, but she can never be the same woman again. So there's just a little bit of that tinge of I'm a little crazy.
Seus amiguinhos não se mijaram assim.
In this like really twisted script of this twisted story, we're actually bonding a lot as friends and making these shots, making these takes better. And I think a little bit more depth to them. I think everyone's going to get more than just a horror flick out of this, or a thriller flick. There's some characters in here that are quotable. You know, there's some iconic horror villains in here that are quotable.
I felt like, okay, I'm gonna be okay. But then all of a sudden it just welled up and I wasn't. And I just was crying and crying and crying. And Stephen came over to me and wrapped his arms around me and held me for, it might have even been like 10 minutes. He didn't say anything. He didn't move. He just sat there until I was able to cry it out.
It's rare that you work on something where the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you have a visceral reaction, and it's such an intense bonding with the other actors, and that's something you don't get on every project, and to have that is what every actor hopes to have.
It's a privilege that we get to go so deeply dark and get to go to a place that, you know, in other walks of life you get arrested. It's a privilege to get to go to those dark places in a safe environment like a movie set.
This cast, we've all gotten on really well, and there's some trust here. Enough trust to do this kind of picture together, where you can feel like we can take it a little bit further every take, and it's going to be okay. And I feel that way with Sarah. I know I'm in good hands. I know I'm in good hands. I hope I'm in good hands.
Se você gosta desse tipo de conteúdo, não esqueça de deixar um like no vídeo, se inscrever no canal e ativar as notificações. E nos vemos no próximo vídeo. Até mais!